Good afternoon there. Interesting update, really interesting update. And if you're an interpreter, which you probably are if you're listening to or watching this video, this news might shock you. It's certainly going to change the way that you operate, the way that you provide your services. And it's a sign of the times where end users of the service or the service requester are playing their part in defining the service level from the agency and ultimately how they expect an interpreter to perform. Very recently, we were contacted by an organisation who supplies language services, and their client or potential client has outlined to them some of the service inefficiencies from the current agency who is supplying that contract. And one of the areas that they want to develop or improve is the technical language style, the knowledge of keywords, terminology, acronyms associated with that environment. Ultimately, they want the interpreter to have the same contextual linguistic capacity as that of the professional. And this is quite significant purely because traditionally as an interpreter, if you did not have a direct translation or misunderstood or did not have any understanding of a word or phrase that the professional was using, your first port of call would be to ask for clarification so that you can re-hear in a different format that word or that phrase that would give you the ability to resupply the interpretation to the limited English speaker. But it appears that this is no longer going to be the case. So what's caused this? I can only assume that time is the most important element on behalf of the professional, or from the professional's point of view. And what we sometimes forget is an interpreter who's providing their service is not necessarily focused on the internal service level agreements that organisations have within their own processes and workflows. So that might be customer processing time, it might be a schedule, it might be anything. And organisations themselves want to become more efficient. I can only assume that regardless of whether it's done once in a interpreting transaction or numerous times, that professionals are wanting to condense the amount of time that they are taking with a particular customer. And when there's an interpreter involved, obviously that elongates the time, and where they're having to explain what stuff means, that can add even more time to the transaction. It could also restrict the flow of thinking and communication that the professional is experiencing in that transaction. And in order to keep things up to speed, to use a general term, they now want interpreters to have that similar linguistic setting and knowledge and expertise. Is it a game changer? Is it not? What this does mean is that you may have to start to increase your knowledge of setting-based terminology, acronyms, processes, procedures. And I think that this is where the industry is going, no doubt about it. And those that engage fully in learning the settings really, really well will be the interpreters that excel over the next few years. Language services is a really, really strange sector. And what I mean by that is when I compare it to other recruitment sectors or other types of jobs, if you were recruiting a salesperson, you'd want to know if they've sold a similar product in the same industry, how many years experience they've got, and many, many other things. But sometimes in language services, just a qualification or ability to speak a language is all that's required. The police have successfully moved to a model where they've explained to the agencies that it's no longer okay just to supply a linguist. They need to supply a linguist who's completely aware of the setting that they're going to be interpreting in. And I think that this will start to move across other settings like the NHS. I get a feeling that hospitals will request that somebody has had end-of-life setting experience, obstetrics, certain illnesses or certain types of appointment experience, so that they're guaranteed to get somebody who has that vocabulary, that lexicon. And just think about it, it would make things, more efficient, no doubt about it. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I can see why a service requester has illustrated that they would want this type of service. So I'm keen to know your viewpoint. Is this a step forwards or is it a step back? What limitations are placed on the interpreter as a result of having to move in this direction? Or is it something that as an interpreter or language professional you should accept and move towards? Some people will have to develop. We know that CPD is central to an interpreter's evolution, and evolving in your skill set and developing should be welcomed, just like any other industry sector. So hit us with your comments. Love to know what you think about what I've just said and how it might or might not, impact you and the industry as a whole.